And this is from Philippians. Forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize to which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. He's called me, little old me, little old goof up me. We've all lost it from time to time, haven't we? We've all lost it from time to time. I lost it in Paris this summer. I was in Paris, and of course, everything's in French, right? I mean, I studied French at school, and my French is pretty good, you know. But, you know, it's a big place, and there's a lot of stuff I didn't understand. And so I had paid money, you know, the bicycle rental thing they have in some of these big cities, you know, you sign it out, you ride it for a while, lock it up at another place. So I'd sign up for this. And I couldn't get this thing working. And it was like, you know, the last straw, the camel's back, all of that stuff, right? You know. Guys, I lost it. I started swearing. And it wasn't quiet. It was loud. And I was yelling at Paris, and I was stomping my feet. And there was a cafe sort of over there, and those people were kind of looking at me, and, you know, like, I'm glad the cops weren't around. You know what I'm saying? Because there's such a thing as disturbing the peace, right? You know, like, so I said to myself, I need a meeting. You know what I'm saying? So I had been to a church service at a place called the American Cathedral. And then in their bulletin, you know, something like this, they had it was a little bit fancier than this, but they had like advertisements in there. They had an advertisement for AA. It was great, you know. So I thought, I need a meeting. So I found this meeting at the American Church. That's a different place. And so as I came in, you know, you don't know anybody, and you're always trying to find the door, right? Which door is it? You know where the church is. You never know what door to go in. They know what door. You always go to the wrong door. You can never find the right door. Anyway, I get in there, and this guy, you know, older cat like myself, comes over and said, he says, you're going to share it tonight. Well, I thought he meant like, you know, we go around in a circle when it's your turn, right? You know. So they go through the preamble, and then he comes and says, "Okay, John is going to be our speaker tonight. It's 15 minutes starting now." You know, and it's an amazing story because those who know me, I collect watches, and I had my chronograph on, which is a stopwatch, right? So I press, you know. And when I was finished, I stopped it. Guys, no word of a lie. It was exactly to the second 15 minutes. You know? And there's a word I want to teach you, and it's hyperbole. Hyperbole is exaggeration. I'm going to engage in an exaggeration, a hyperbole right now, okay? After I shared, everybody wanted me to be their sponsor. Okay. Okay, it's a bit of an exaggeration, but it went over, you know, pretty well, talking about the steps. So I got up some confidence to come to Wayne and say, Wayne, I think it's time. I'd really like to share. And I talked about working the steps. Now, step one, of course, I want to tell just a little bit about step one for me. When I was sitting out in front of my house after my wife had thrown me out, right? With all my clothes in the back seat of my station wagon, you know. I was open to suggestion at that point, you know. And you guys had 12 of them. You had 12 suggestions, right? As Wayne likes to say, you know, we have 12 suggestions. You know, it's like the parachute. When you jump out of the plane, we suggest you pull the ripcord, right? You know, so started working those 12 suggestions. And I remember going to a Glenmore meeting one time, and a guy talked about being whupped. It was great, you know, step one. He was talking to, he says, I've had enough, and he went on about how alcohol had beaten him down, and I remember him saying, I was whupped, and that's a very good description, I think, of step one. A friend of mine, now deceased, was a very prominent artist, and he was a member of the program. Wayne, after they're dead, you still have to respect their anonymity, right? You still can't say their last name, can you? Right? So it's Ted G, okay? And when Ted used to come and hear us play with the Bob Merlinson Octet, and we were playing one time, and I overheard this conversation. It was very interesting. It was talking about wine cellars, you know, and this one's for you, Wayne. He says, I had a wine cellar. He says, yeah. I drank it. Not quite so loud. Softer. They're not that funny. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And then, so as I got to know Ted, he would unwind a little bit, and he had another good one, you know, talking about step one. He says, yeah, my neighbors. He says, yeah, they know I'm in AA. He says, yeah. He says, I don't park my car on the lawn anymore. But I think the best one he told me was, he says, John, I was at an event one time, and he says, I went up to the bar, and the bartender said, would you like a drink? And Ted says, no. He says, I better not. He says, I have to be home in time for Christmas. So anyway, you know, we are not a glum lot. It says in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, we are not a glum lot, you know, and who would want to be around us if we were? I mean, step one, I think this is where, you know, forgetting what is behind. You know, we put this behind us and we get moving, we get working, we strain toward what is ahead. You know, I watch that show on TV, Blue Bloods, the Tom Selleck character, you know, and he says, in our program, we talk about doing the next right thing, you know, and it's about what you do next. You know, it's not about what you've done; it's what you do next. And I think that's what it's about, working the steps. You know, so Gary Gerber, who was my counselor at the time, you know, this is 24 years ago. Yeah, it's 1994, and he says. I told him, you know, about my situation, getting thrown out of the house. I said, I'm staying at my parents' house. They're away right now, and I had a key, so I'm in there. And they had this bottle of scotch. Now, I didn't know at the time what you guys call it. It was 40 ounces. I now know it's a 40-pounder, right? Yeah, we call it in the program 40-pounder. So I was hitting that pretty hard, and I have to admit I was smoking that wacky tobacco in as well. And so anyway, I told Gary about this, and I'll never forget what he said. He said, you may wish to set aside the substances and stay with the pain. That was good advice. And so that was Thanksgiving, 1994, and you know, the grace of God and the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. I haven't, you know, I'm clean and sober about 21 years, whatever it is. Yeah. And they told us three things. They said, go to meetings, get a sponsor, work the steps, you know. And I think most of us, you know, we go to meetings. The sponsor, well, do I have a sponsor? Have I called them? Well, you know. And working the steps, you know, and this is what I want to talk about, is working the steps. You know, Father Douglas used to go to the Glenmore group, and he was Scottish. So he would say, go to meetings, get a sponsor, work the steps. And in Scotland, they can't say the word don't. They say dunna. Why do they say dunna? Dunna take the first drink. I don't know. Dunna take the first drink. Don't take the first drink. Read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and rigorously live the program every day of your life. You know, those are the 6 things that he talked about. But working the steps, you know, so step 1 got me in. It got me in here. It got my attention, you know, and I'm glad it did. That's been a blessing to come into the program. And on page 87 of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says, see where religious people are right and make use of what they have to offer. And that's what we're doing here, right? You know, so there's a lot that the church has to offer. So started going to meetings, got a sponsor, and working the steps. So step 1, you know, I'm not one of these people that would say I'm a recovered alcoholic, because I don't want to tempt fate. I don't want to start to presume I've got everything under control. I prefer to say I'm a recovering alcoholic addict. And so step one, I think it's enough to be here. I don't think we have to dwell in step one. I think we can say, yeah, we're here. Let's start working the steps. I went through a phase where I listened to a lot of speaker tapes. How many have heard of Joe and Charlie? A few? Oh, quite a few. Okay. Well, so Joe started speaking, and man, I thought he had a drawl, a southern drawl. I could barely understand him. That was Joe. And then Charlie starts in. Charlie was the one with the drawl. Those guys are from the South, the deep South. Holy cow. But they talked about working the steps, of course, and they said this, I'll never forget, in the speaker tape. They said, nobody's ever been hurt by working the steps too fast. A lot of people have been hurt by working the steps too slowly. Okay? So I think the message is get working the steps. The steps are in order. They're in order for a reason. Okay? So step one, all right? Step two, to me, that's a step of joy. Came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. That's a very happy thought. Could restore me to sanity. And what does Wayne say about that? He says, we've got to do the work, right? And I think that's what that implies. The steps are very concise. So I think it's implying a lot more than just the language. God could, restore us to sanity. And then making that decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of my higher power. An old timer that I met, New Jersey, it was a conference there, one of these recovery conferences. He said he prayed steps 1, 2, 3 as a prayer first thing in the morning. And you know what? I've done that, I'm going to say, here's another hyperbole, every day since. Well, okay, yeah. I mean, that's my intention, and that's what I do. I start with step 1. I have the disease of forgetfulness. I have a disease that wants to tell me I don't have a disease. So I need to review my step 1 in the morning. But right away go into step 2, because that's a step of joy, and to say, I now decide to turn my will and my life over to the care of my higher power. Step 1, 2, and 3 every morning. Step 4. Yeah. And it was step 1 that got me in, And that works through to step 9. And I think that's the point, is that we're on step 1, okay? Step 1 gets us in the program. And you work through the steps after that, and to get you through to the amends. And that's where the promises are. The promises are at step 9. So we're at step 1. And I encourage you to work the steps in order, 2, 3, 4, do the inventories, the lists, and then to make those amends at that point, And to me, that's what lifted the burden off of my shoulders was step 9, and then the maintenance steps after that. So go to meetings, get a sponsor, work the steps, forgetting what is behind, straining toward what is ahead. I press on toward the goal to win the prize to which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. Thank you very much.